Hi, I'm Beth, and I'll be reading you today's e-edition of the Bourne Enterprise, and it's dated Friday, January 16th. Here is your first front page headline. Board of Appeals dismisses multiple requests. Multiple requests to appeal the building commissioner's action on submitted complaints caused some confusion among Zoning Board of Appeals members during a meeting on January 7th. 5 addresses were discussed: 24 Westview Street in Pocasset, 57 Valley Farm Road in Pocasset, 20 Quaker Lane in Monument Beach, 5 Old Head of the Bay in Buzzards Bay, and 10 Harborside Lane in Katomet. Now, each address was the subject of complaints filed by attorney Michael Donovan and client Christina Stevens of Lighthouse Realty regarding weddings held on each property. We filed this complaint with respect to 24 Westview, as the building commissioner had issued a tent permit for that property when the application indicated that it was for a wedding, Donovan said. Stevens is the owner of 0-1 Lighthouse Lane in Wings Neck. She has been ordered several times not to rent her home for weddings and other special events. Building Inspector Kenneth Murphy issued a cease and desist order after Bourne police were called to Stevens' property, where a wedding was taking place on November 9, 2024. Stevens then filed her appeal with the ZBA and eventually the Land Court. Knowing that weddings are held in residentially zoned areas in Bourne, both by homeowners and renters, Ms. Stevens appealed to the ZBA, pointing out the potential issues with the loose language and her belief she was being singled out, Donovan said in a statement sent to the Enterprise. We had a ZBA hearing back in May, and in that written decision that came out, page 5 of that decision said a wedding is clearly allowed as an accessory use for a resident, Donovan said. We appealed that ZBA decision into the Land Court and at the Land Court. We all submitted a joint case management statement, and within that, the ZBA counsel said on page 8 that weddings are not an allowed use in the town's R80 zoning district, and the zoning bylaw is clear that property owners in the R80 zoning district are not allowed to use their land to host weddings or wedding receptions. Donovan said he and his client believed there are inconsistencies between the ZBA's decision and the Land Court's decision regarding allowing weddings as accessory uses for residents. He said he didn't receive written responses regarding the complaints from the building commissioner. Town Council Brian Bertram said the town does not prohibit allowable accessory residential uses such as weddings, but rather what we are litigating is the rule that was announced by the appeals court, which is that it is a proper interpretation of our zoning bylaw that you cannot have a commercial wedding within this zoning district. Paula Meriden said she owns the Westview Street property along with her siblings, and that the complaint refers to a family wedding that was held on the property. We had a family wedding for my nephew, a family event. There was no money exchanged. We hadn't had an event there in 25 years, Meridian said. This is different than having a commercial use of property in a residential area, which is what the Lighthouse has been doing for the last 25 years. So this is a totally different situation. Resident Julie Malloy said multiple owners of the properties being discussed were not notified of the meeting. And Zoning Board Chairman James Byer said he was unsure what action the board could take on the matter. We can't compel the building inspector to do anything, and this event has already happened, he said. Board Vice Chairman Chris Pine said he felt similarly to Bayer and is supportive of denying the request. Board member Joseph Spinale said the permit was issued more than a year ago. I don't see how the applicant here is an aggrieved party for something that happened more than a year before. It seems more like a little litigation posture to me. Board member Elsa Bystrom said she was confused about the request, as she believed it was not within the board's purview. Byer asked Donovan if he knew of any complaints from the neighbors regarding weddings on the property, to which Donovan said he was not aware of any. Pine asked if Donovan expected a different action to be taken regarding this property. It is my understanding that things have been differentiated, saying they are family weddings and they're not being rented. And in this instance, that's not the case, and the town council had talked about commercial weddings. We feel this is what that falls into, Donovan said, adding the property is in the R80 district. Again, this is referring to the old Head of the Bay Road property that used to be rented out to host wedding events according to its website, and there was a long history of issuing tent permits to this property for the purposes of weddings. Jonathan Silverstein, the attorney representing Bay End Road, which is located on the old Head of the Bay Road property, Bay End Farm, has operated as a working farm and has hosted events for many decades. He said the board has issued decisions in the past affirming the farm's right to hold events. Silverstein argued there is no proper appeal before the board because there is no written decision to be appealed. The board still dismissed the request along with the others. Another front-page story. After months of deliberation, the Select Board at its meeting on Tuesday reached a final decision that Bourne Cannabis will be the recipient of the Outstanding Social Equity Host Community Agreement, HCA, for a cannabis dispensary in town. In recent months, the board has discussed two applicants for the agreement, Bourne Cannabis and Cape Cod Dispensary, doing business as NLM Incorporated. Board members used a rubric from the Mass Cannabis Control Commission to score the applicants. The board initially selected Bourne Cannabis as the recipient in September. However, NLM took issue with the scoring process, claiming the votes reflected bias, ultimately causing the board to take another look at the process. Tuesday night's vote reflected the one taken in September, with board members Peter Meyer, Mary Jane Mastrangelo, and Jean Azarovitz voting in favor of Bourne Cannabis, and Ferretti and Sarunian both voting for NLM. NLM did not advance for the following reasons, as noted in the draft narrative: did not present as strong a plan for diversion and prevention, did not demonstrate as strong a plan for local involvement, and did not present a hiring plan that was diverse. The proposal for consumer education was not as strong. There were concerns about the location. Compliance plans were not well addressed, and the hiring plan was vague. The draft narrative outlined that Bourne Cannabis LLC was chosen as the recipient due to the following reasons: presented a strong diversion and prevention plan, presented a strong energy and environment plan, presented deep local involvement in the operation, and a realistic schedule to begin operations in a timely manner. It is finally done, Ferretti said. Congratulations. In other news, a 4-alarm fire damaged a commercial woodworking building on State Road in North Sagamore on Saturday, January 10th, drawing roughly 65 firefighters and forcing the road to be closed. The Bourne Fire Department wrote in a news release that a hazardous materials response team was called in and one minor injury was reported. Crews were dispatched to ML Custom Millworks in Cabinetry at 150 State Road around 6:30 p.m. for a central station alarm. The size of the building and the scope of the fire prompted a second alarm request, and as operations continued, it escalated to a 4-alarm fire that drew additional units to the scene. Fire Chief David Polanzi said the fire's location within the structure made access difficult and significantly hampered suppression efforts. Heavy equipment was ultimately used to remove a portion of the building to access the seat of the fire. We had to cut open doors, we had to cut open walls, we had to do a lot of work to get to it, Polanzi said, adding that due to the large size of the building, any time a crew went into the building, a rapid intervention team was on standby. It was a labor-intensive fire. Polanzi said that after knocking down flames on the first level of the structure, firefighters encountered the main body of the fire in the storage and woodworking area on the second level. Given the nature of the business and the woodworking materials, the State District 1 Hazardous Materials Response Team was requested to monitor air quality. Readings showed elevated carbon monoxide levels in and around the fire ground, with no additional hazardous conditions detected. The Bourne Police Department closed State Road from Meeting House Lane to the intersection with Old Plymouth Road in response to the fire. All traffic was diverted to Old Plymouth Road. The news release stated the fire was brought under control at approximately 12:30 a.m. There was one minor firefighter injury which did not require treatment or transportation. The Bourne Fire Department returned to the scene for a wet down on Sunday morning. In a phone call with the Enterprise on Monday, Polanyi said the cause of the fire is still under investigation. He said the fire department is currently unsure of the extent of the damage and the status of the building. At this time, we are assessing the situation and taking all necessary measures with responsibility and safety as our top priorities, ML Custom Millworks and Cabinetry wrote in a statement posted on Facebook. We will continue to keep everyone informed with further updates regarding the situation and resumption of our operations. Another front page story, the Barnstable County Sheriff's Office had its federal funding for addiction treatment services abruptly terminated and then reinstated in less than 24 hours following sporadic moves by the Trump administration. The office was one of thousands of agencies nationwide that received funding termination letters from the Federal Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration on Tuesday, the 13th. The letters stated that almost $2 billion in funding for addiction and mental health programs had been cut, effective immediately. The funding was then reinstated on Wednesday evening, January 14th. The change of course comes after aggressive lobbying by lawmakers from both parties and a letter to Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. with signatures from 100 House members, according to the New York Times. The reversal also follows intense furor from health providers and national advocacy groups for individuals who experience substance use or mental health issues, who warn the termination would hurt countless programs supporting people experiencing addiction, homelessness, and mental health issues. It remains unclear why the federal funding was canceled and restored. For the Barnstable County Sheriff's Office, the federal funding supports its expanded medication-assisted treatment program. The program provides case management, individual and group counseling, re-entry planning, and recovery coaching for pretrial and sentenced individuals who experience opioid use. Sheriff Donna Buckley said the cancellation was shocking and likened it to having the rug swept out from underneath you. While the funding was terminated, the Barnstable County Sheriff's Office published a written statement on its website and Facebook page. Buckley's statement said the program provides its services during incarceration and for 6 months post-release, offering evidence-based treatment to reduce opioid use rates and collaborating with providers to ensure access to services upon reentry to communities. With this senseless cut by the Trump administration, our streets will be less safe, the jails will be fuller, and the most vulnerable people will be at risk. The Barnstable County Sheriff's Office received an official notice that the funding had been restored at 3:12 p.m. on Thursday, January 15th. Buckley said the notice read the following: "This correspondence serves as official notice that the termination of your federal award previously communicated on January 13th is hereby rescinded. Your award will remain active under original terms and conditions. Please disregard the prior termination notice and continue program activities as outlined in your award." Buckley said the recent whiplash in funding activity and communications is irresponsible and not how a government should work. "To me, it is unconscionable," Buckley said. "Life and death circumstances were involved in pulling these resources off the table. No notice, no explanation, no consideration for the real impact of pulling $2 billion in resources off the table." In other news, Bourne police were dispatched to Plum Lane for a report of a suicidal man who was on foot and headed in an unknown direction on Saturday at approximately 3:19 p.m. A Facebook post from the Bourne Police Department stated that Bourne Police and the Mass State Police, including its Air Wing, began an extensive search of the area. Unfortunately, at approximately 4:20 p.m., the 75-year-old male from Bourne was located deceased in a wooded area nearby from an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound, the post reads. Mass State Police detectives assigned to the Cape and Islands DA's office are currently investigating the incident. "We express our sincere condolences to the family and friends of the involved individual. We would also like to express our thanks to all the agencies that assisted with the search and investigation. Those in crisis should call the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. And Bourne police responded to a report of a pedestrian being struck by a car at the intersection of Shore Road and Barlow's Landing Road at approximately 5:16 on Monday. The police department stated in a Facebook post that a 72-year-old man from Bourne was hit by a gray 2015 Ford Fiesta, which was operated by an 83-year-old woman from Bourne. The man was transported to the hospital for what appeared to be non-life-threatening injuries, and the woman was cited for failure to yield to a pedestrian in a crosswalk. Police said the Ford Fiesta was turning left onto Shore Road from Barlow's Landing Road when it struck the male at low speed while he was in the crosswalk. And this story, town engineer Timothy Lydon returned to the Select Board on Tuesday to continue a presentation about a petition to repair Tara Terrace, Eldridge Street, and Eldridge Street Extension in the Sunset Acres 1 and 2 subdivisions. While these are all private residential roads, meaning homeowners would usually be responsible for them, the engineering department received a petition over the summer with more than 50% of signatures requesting a temporary repair of these streets. These petitions, which demonstrate that the majority of residents support the town performing temporary repairs along the roads, are a legal requirement for the project getting off the ground. This temporary repair would allow the town to step in and handle construction. Wanting to focus on discussing what the work would entail, Lydon explained that there are areas of major disrepair for Eldridge Street as well as Tara Terrace. There's sunken utility lines that were not backfilled properly or frost heaving that went from a small pothole to a very large pothole. I will say that the full depth reclamation that we are doing on Eldridge Street is almost equal to the full depth reclamation we will be doing on Tara Terrace. So I wanted it to be clear. Outside of this is not just a pothole repair project, Lydon said. We will be doing a 2-inch mill and overlay throughout the entire project. So at the end of the day, this will be a brand new road. The Select Board members shared their appreciation for the work of those involved in the petition to improve safety, but also acknowledged the potential financial impacts on some residents. I just wanted to say thank you very much for the additional information in the packet about the extent of the work with the mill and overlay and the detailed explanation of what is involved, Select Board member Mary Jane Mastrangelo said. I think that really helps understand what the project is and how much of a repair it is that will really benefit the neighborhood. We're doing this for public safety reasons, Select Board member Peter Meyer said. We will make sure that throughout the process of doing this work that we will save the taxpayers as much money. Select Board Chairwoman Melissa Ferretti also acknowledged the price. I know there's some residents that weren't for it because of the sticker shock. We do understand that, Ferretti said. In the end, town meeting decides. You've had a lot of conversation and you did due diligence, Select Board Vice Chairwoman Anne-Marie Sarunian said. I know there is some contingency in the other 30%, which allows the residents an opportunity to really manage the project within their finances because this is going to be a hit to people. Let me ask you this. Is the DPW going to be doing some of the work on this project and then it's outsourced for actual paving, Sarunian said? We will be doing all of the bidding and the catch basin cleaning, DPW Director Matt Sawaki said. At the end of the project, we may do some of the loam and seeding depending on the extent of what work is necessary. This will also help save the residents some money. The Select Board voted unanimously to place an article on the annual town meeting warrant to appropriate the sum of $1,038,373 for the purpose of temporary repairs and resurfacing of Tara Terrace, Eldridge Street, and Eldridge Street Extension in Monument Beach, finding such repairs are required by the public necessity and convenience. In other news, the Cape Cod Foundation has launched its annual scholarship program. The organization administers almost 100 different scholarship funds for seniors graduating from high school, current college students, and adults planning to pursue degrees and certificate programs. Last year, the foundation awarded more than $1 million in scholarship support to more than 140 local students. The Cape Cod Foundation has a new scholarship fund available this year. The Cape Cod Foundation STEM Scholarship, which was established to support graduating high school seniors, current college students or returning adult students from Cape Cod who are majoring in STEM and display perseverance and a strong work ethic in achieving their post-secondary educational goals. To learn more about current opportunities and how to apply online, visit capecodfoundation.org. Most scholarships are available through the Cape Cod Foundation's Universal Application. The deadline to apply is Sunday, March 1st. And here's this week's recycling tip. Paper cups, such as those from Starbucks and Dunkin', are now suitable for recycling. New technology now allows the processing of these cups with a thin plastic lining. The lid and any straws belong in the trash, so be sure to separate them before recycling. For more information about whether an item is recyclable, visit the website recyclesmartma.org. And from the opinion page today, this editorial titled Predictions for Journalism in 2026. As each year closes and a new one begins, the Nieman Lab publishes a roundup of what the smartest people in digital media predict the coming year will hold for the journalism industry. It's a fun annual tradition, and over the next 2 weeks, the Enterprise Editorial Board will be bringing you our takes on some of the takes published in the Nieman Lab's Predictions for Journalism 2026 collection. Next week, we'll present Part 2. From John Paradise, Executive Editor and Editor of the Falmouth Enterprise, Social Media's Decline is Journalism's Hope. For many years, the Cape's daily newspaper was a force to reckon with here at the Enterprise, real competition. Sometimes its reporters beat us to a story. More often than not, and I'm still proud to say it, we beat them. On deadline Thursdays, and especially on print Fridays, our editors and reporters would eye the daily's front page with our breath held, worrying we might have missed something big. Those days are largely gone now, along with much of the reporting and editing staff that once made that daily paper formidable. Today, our biggest competitor isn't another newsroom, it's Facebook, and that's sad. Too many people among us turn to social media platform for their news, even though those platforms have been hard to trust, and with the advent of AI, even harder still. The social media feed has become a chaotic blend of the real and the fake, writes Jonas Kaiser, an assistant professor for communication and journalism at Suffolk University and a faculty associate at the Berkman Klein Center for Internet and Society. Newsy updates and personal posts now sit alongside AI-generated nonsense, fabricated images and content designed more to provoke clicks than convey truth. And the problem is only getting worse. As generative AI content floods social platforms, the line between what's real and what's fabricated is disappearing rapidly, Kaiser said. Social media companies aren't resisting this trend, they're encouraging it, building tools and spaces designed specifically for A1-generated content. It's frustrating to witness. Yet buried in this mess is an opportunity for journalists. Journalism, especially local journalism, can still provide what these platforms cannot. Its strength has never been about chasing algorithms or winning culture wars. It's about serving communities, our communities. It's about school committees, wastewater treatment plants, libraries, local theater, and holding local power to account. That's why local news tends to earn more trust than national outlets. It's rooted in shared place and shared concerns. As social media sinks deeper into artificiality, a window is opening for us here in the newsroom, but only if our community chooses to keep it open. People are hungry for something real, verified information, thoughtful reporting, and stories rooted in the place they call home. That is what local journalism provides, and it cannot be generated by an algorithm or crowdsource from a comment thread. Our work exists for one reason: to serve our communities, but it can only continue with community support. Local journalism does not survive on clicks or viral posts. It survives when readers recognize its value and invest in it. This newspaper matters now more than ever. And the web editor and editor of the Sandwich Enterprise, Katie Beattie, writes, "The year we band together and fight back." It is, yes, time to be an advocate. I said it. Carrie Brown. This one is touchy, and we're painfully aware of that, and we also feel like it's a statement that is at odds with the core tenet of journalism. We strive for neutrality in our reporting. We report the facts, not our feelings. We know that we have readers who will disagree with the previous statements. However, we are currently seeing nationwide an assault on the free press, both physically and legally. Brown writes about some of the more brazen examples, such as the canceling of Jimmy Kimmel and the cases of 2 Kentucky-based reporters who are on trial for practicing journalism. Recently, we've had the plot of Sinclair Lewis's It Can't Happen Here on our minds, specifically the plight of editor Dormis Jessup, who finds himself in a concentration camp after publishing a series of critical editorials about the sitting administration. It feels to us like the time is coming ever nearer where newspapers will have to take a stand against the things that are objectively wrong. Yes, the Trump administration, Fox News, etc. would label this the woke left media or whatever and go on the attack. Let them, Brown said. Some journalists will say this is writing off the Fox News audience at our peril. But this audience is already gone, ensconced in its bubble, where suddenly the Epstein files don't matter so much after all. Local networks, not silver bullets, will sustain local news. When you look at the news coverage on Cape Cod, it isn't very difficult to see which outlets are respected by locals and which ones are not. We are, of course, biased toward our own brand, but we're not ignorant to where folks are going when they're looking for local information. Beyond newspapers and news websites, residents are frequently turning to social media, in particular, town-specific groups and county coverage such as that found in Cape Cod Incidents and Hyannis News. Dale R. Anglin writes about how billionaire investors and philanthropists are not coming out to help local news. No, instead the solutions will be local. We could not agree more. Who could understand the needs and interests of our towns more than the people who live and work there every day? We look forward to continuing to be part of the local solution to news in the coming year, as well as hopefully expanding our brand a little further down Cape to help bridge the gap in real, local news coverage in our region. And this column, written by Taylor Frizzetti, Bourne Musings, it's written by Wesley Ewell, who's retired from a career in community planning and real estate. And he writes, "With mixed feelings, I offer this column as the final installment of my Bourne Musings. Over the last 6 years, the Enterprise has published 112 of these columns. The editors and publishers have been wonderful people to work for, rarely changing anything more than a misplaced comma and granting me total freedom to write anything that comes to mind as long as it's related to Bourne. But the time has come to let go of this assignment. I am no longer involved with town government, and there's a limit on how many times I can complain about our state highway department or stress the value of replacing an obsolete rail line with a recreational path that would benefit our town in so many ways. Bourne's changed a lot since I was a kid enjoying summers on Hen Cove. Back then, Pocasset Heights was a seasonal neighborhood of simple family cottages that were passed down from generation to generation. My grandparents had only one neighbor living there through the winter. The area is now dominated by year-round retirement homes and seldom used second homes. The cove is ecologically barren now, damaged by toxic runoff and aircraft fuel that is leached from the military facilities. Fortunately, the source of these contaminants is being controlled, and the eelgrass, quahogs, and crabs may someday return for our great-grandchildren to enjoy. Main Street in Buzzards Bay has finally recovered and become a thriving downtown with new apartments, year-round restaurants, a real hotel, and interesting shops. We're still waiting for commuter rail service, but that may eventually happen now that the South Coast Rail extension to New Bedford and Fall River has been finished. The revitalization of our downtown was the result of a 30-year effort by dedicated volunteers. The goal of creating an active community where people can live, work, shop, and play has been reached and will continue to expand. Bourne has also fundamentally changed over the last two decades since I retired from full-time work and became involved with town affairs as a planning consultant and as a volunteer on a half a dozen committees. Our town is no longer dominated by the military base, which has become an empty shell of its former glory. I expect its eventual closing and redevelopment to become the biggest issue facing Bourne after the canal bridges are replaced. The base's potential as a regional airport surrounded by workforce housing and business development holds great promise if done right. I intend to continue to write occasional guest columns for the Enterprise, as I did for years before becoming a regular columnist. I'm about to turn 85, and writing is one of the few things I've been able to do in recent years. It has kept me thinking clearly, and the positive feedback from loyal readers has been rewarding. I especially want to thank everyone at the Enterprise for their enthusiastic support and encouragement. It's been a fun ride. And again, that was written by Wesley Ewell, who lives in Bourne. And we're at the halfway point of the broadcast. I'll now read today's obituaries. Margaret S. Santangelo of Mashpee, formerly of Belmont, died on January 7th in Boston. She was 90. A member of the American Association of Clinical Pathologists, she enjoyed a career as a medical technologist from 1955 until her retirement in 1990. Known for her compassion and skill, she was renowned for her care of vulnerable patients, from premature babies to seniors and those who were critically wounded. Known for her hospitality, her door was always open and visitors were welcome to pull up a chair to her table or find a bed, couch, or section of floor to sleep on. Over the course of their 53-year marriage, she and her husband, Richard Santangelo, raised 3 sons to follow their passion and serve their communities. Together, they also enjoyed many travel adventures. Her happiest days were spent with her family. She leaves her sons, Richard Santangelo and his wife Holly of Mashpee, William Santangelo and his wife Laurie of Seattle, and John Santangelo and his wife Valerie of Bourne. 9 grandchildren, 2 great-grandchildren, and many nieces and nephews. She was predeceased by her husband. Burial was at the Massachusetts National Cemetery in Bourne. On January 10th, 2026, at his home in Plainfield, Mass., Peter Bumpus met death in much the same way he lived his life, with courage and inner strength. Born in Boston in 1943, he was adopted as an infant by Dean and Catherine Bumpus and raised in Woods Hole. He graduated from Tabor Academy in 1961 and Marlborough College in 1965. Peter's love for adventure and the outdoors was evident from an early age. With his father, he summited Mount Katahdin as a 7-year-old. As a youngster, he frequently sailed the waters of Vineyard Sound and Buzzards Bay on his own. One notable adventure found 10-year-old Peter spending a night at the Seaman's Bethel in Vineyard Haven because the weather turned bad and he couldn't get back to the mainland. As a young man, he shared his love of boats by teaching sailing at the Woods Hole Yacht Club. Later, he started the Eel Pond Sailing School with Barbara Gary. After college, Peter started his career in marine construction back in Woods Hole when he went to work for D.W. Clark. With the Clark crew, he was part of building Lulu, the first ship WHOI used to carry the Elvin. He worked as a pile driver and superintendent on large dock building projects throughout New England. He founded his own company, Eel Pond Forge and Welding Works. He also worked for AGM Marine Construction and Ciambro Corporation. During his career, work took him across the country from Maine to Alaska doing marine construction and as a senior certified welding inspector. Throughout his life, Peter built many boats, from a wooden skiff built in a single day to win a bet with his father-in-law, to the Black Seal, a 72-foot steel schooner built in Hatchville that took decades to complete. He built 2 fishing draggers, the Anne Marie and the John and Felicia, in Lester-Bourne Sandput in West Falmouth, the tug Corvus built on Martha's Vineyard, and numerous small push boats. Peter's curiosity and creativity knew no bounds. In the 80s, he took up ballet and modern dance, performing with Heather Shepley's amateur troupe. This endeavor brought him great joy then and for the rest of his life. Peter enjoyed walking, hiking, and biking trails in the Northeast and well beyond. He hiked canal and rail paths and camped along them. Some of these were solitary, but many included his family. Canoe trips with his children and grandchildren and others were a regular occurrence for 20 years. He walked the Camino de Santiago across Spain 4 times, including once with a granddaughter. He loved this time on the Camino in large part because of the people he met. He made these connections easily because he was fluent in Spanish and spoke passable Galician along with reading several other languages. Later in life, Peter searched for and found members of his biological family, meeting his birth mother and building lasting relationships with siblings and other family members. Peter was predeceased by his brother Jim Hale, Linwood, Washington. He is survived by his wife Judy Gaiove, Plainfield, his brother in spirit, Tom Renshaw from Woods Hole, his siblings Mike Hale from Taunton, Martha Cassie from East Falmouth, and Stormy O'Keefe from Nashville, his children and stepchildren, Tom Reed from Doylestown, Pennsylvania, Heidi Smith from Bourne, Matthew Bumpus from Woods Hole, Adrian Hamilton from Seattle, Christine Gaiove from Charlottesville, Virginia, 14 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren. A remembrance of his life will be held at a later date. And the following residents, former residents, or family of residents of Falmouth, Mashpee, and Sandwich recently died. Visit capenews.net to read the complete obituary news stories. Walter Dondero, 86 of Falmouth, died on January 4th. Margaret Dunn, 84 of Stuart, Florida, December 17th. Joyce Ibrahim, 96 of Mashpee, January 8th. James McDivitt, 90 of Falmouth, died on January 13th. William Newton, 67 of Falmouth, January 6th. Erica O'Brien, 50, January 9th. Timothy Radford, 79 of Woods Hole, January 10th. And Catherine Ravens, 95 of Falmouth, died on December 22nd. Back to the news, and the following are excerpts from the Bourne police logs dated Wednesday, January 7th through Wednesday the 14th. On Wednesday, January 7th, police responded at 8:02 p.m. to a 2-car accident at the intersection of Head of the Bay Road and Plymouth Lane. Police said a black 2020 Chevy Silverado was coming from Head of the Bay and turning left onto Plymouth Lane when he hit a white 2022 Jeep Compass. The driver of the Chevy was cited with a stop sign violation. The Jeep was towed. No injuries were reported. On Thursday, January 8th at 10:35 a.m., police responded to a 2-car accident on Scenic Highway near Edge Hill Road. Police said the crash happened around the area where 2 lanes merged into one due to construction. Both cars were driving in the right lane on Scenic Highway toward Buzzards Bay when the 2006 Toyota Camry rear-ended the white 2019 Buick Enclave. The driver of the Toyota was cited for failing to stop. Officers requested 2 tow trucks. One party was transported to the scene park. No injuries were reported. And at 3:55 p.m., police responded to a 2-car accident at the Bourne East Rotary. Police said a gray 2020 Mercedes entered into the rotary and drifted out of the lane, colliding with a blue 2013 Toyota Tacoma next to it. The driver of the Mercedes was cited for unsafe lane changes. The Toyota was towed. On Saturday, January 10th at 10:02 a.m., police responded to a 2-car accident at the Scenic Highway and Meeting House Lane intersection. A blue 2024 Cadillac was traveling east on Scenic Highway, approaching the intersection with Meeting House Lane. The driver of the Cadillac went through the intersection as the light turned red, hitting a blue 2022 Honda Ridgeline that had a green light. Both cars were towed. The driver of the Cadillac was cited with a red light violation. At 8:04 p.m., police responded to a call reporting a disturbance in the parking lot between 2 men on Head of the Bay Road. Richard Allen Nelson, 36, of West Wareham, was arrested for assault and battery on a person 60 or older or disabled without injury, interfering with a police officer, disorderly conduct, and disturbing the peace. Cash bail was set to $250. Bail was not paid, so Nelson was transported to Barnstable House of Corrections. On Monday, January 12th at 3:23 p.m., police responded to a 2-car accident at the East Rotary and Route 6 and 28 bypass. A gray 2026 GMC Yukon was attempting to enter the rotary from head of the Bay Road when it caught the back of a white 2001 Lexus. The driver of the GMC was identified as Jocelyn Billard, 24 of Bourne, and was cited for failure to yield. No injuries were reported. Police responded to a pedestrian versus car accident at 5:16 p.m. at the intersection of Shore Road and Barlow's Landing Road. A gray 2015 Ford Fiesta was turning left on Shore Road from Barlow's Landing Road and struck a pedestrian in the crosswalk. The driver was cited with a crosswalk violation. The pedestrian was transported for cautionary reasons to a local hospital. On Tuesday, January 13th at 4:02 p.m., police responded to a two-car accident at MacArthur Boulevard and Waterhouse Road. A gray 2026 Volvo was attempting to cut across both lanes of Route 28 heading south near the Waterhouse Road entrance, resulting in being hit by a black 2014 Nissan Pathfinder. The driver of the Volvo was cited for improper operation. No injuries were reported. And on Wednesday, January 14th at 12:03 a.m., a motor vehicle stop on Route 25 heading off Cape led to an arrest. Police had conducted a random license plate search, which revealed that the license plate of a white Volkswagen Jetta was suspended. The driver was identified as Ian Stevens, 40, of New Bedford. Police also found that Stevens had an active warrant for assault and battery on a family/household member, leading to his arrest. He was held without bail at Barnstable House of Corrections. And here's this week's weekly Nature Watch column written by Mary Richmond titled January Musings. Here we are in mid-January already. Wasn't it just September? I know, there have been plenty of holidays rushing past us, but these last few months, punctuated with one horror after another in the news, seems to have raced by as if they could leave the horrors behind if they ripped through the calendar fast enough. It's tough to feel hopeful or positive in these days of constant bombardment by the news, but as always, nature comes to my rescue. Everywhere I look, I see signs of perseverance and fortitude. If a tiny plant can put forth new roots, and a tree branch can show off buds that will be flowers in only a few short months, I guess I can rally. If the chickadees and Carolina wrens can begin to sing even on the coldest mornings because the light makes them restless, then I can speak up as well. Even the gray squirrel washing its face on the fence post reminds me that we can't give up. We may have to gather our strength and prepare for more storms, but we can persevere. You've no doubt noticed that it is getting lighter in the late afternoon and a little earlier in the morning. This is a wonderful thing to celebrate, I think. Who doesn't want more light on a cold and dark winter morning? At the beach, you may be seeing loons hanging out with the eiders and scoters. Common loons are the largest of the bunch with solid bodies, big beaks, and a definitive profile in the water. They disappear underwater as quickly as they appear, so photographing them can be a challenge. The red-throated loons are smaller, perhaps a bit more elegant in appearance. Although their signature red throats aren't obvious in their winter plumages, their sleek appearance, silky gray plumage, and much slimmer bill will help you identify them. Common eiders are fairly easy to identify with their striking black and white plumages. These are only the mature males, however. The females have the same silhouette but are a cinnamon brown color, quite lovely on their own. The immature birds have a mixed-up plumage, and you may see several stages in one group of birds. I suggest you look up immature common eiders to get an idea of the variations you may see. Scoters are easy to find from many beaches. Solid ducks with dark plumages, the faces, bills, and wing patches will help you determine one species from another. There are also the small geese with black fronts called brants at many beaches, but mostly those with eelgrass beds. If you're lucky to be close enough to hear their mumbles and snorts, it should make you smile. Sanderlings are the most common sandpipers we see here in winter, but some areas also host small flocks of dunlins, purple sandpipers, and ruddy turnstones, all in winter plumages. Again, spend a little time with a good guidebook that shows plumage variations before heading out on winter walks. It's a great way to spend some time on a cold winter night with a cup of chamomile tea or hot chocolate. Plants perhaps tell the most amazing stories in January. Most appear dormant at this time of year, but if you're out and about, look closely at the clumps of plants on the ground and at the ends of branches. Growth in winter is slow, almost invisible, but it is there. The sap in trees and shrubs will begin to rise very soon, and buds will swell and expand before we know it. A walk through the winter woods shows us which trees struggled to find the sun, twisting and turning as they grew. Some shoot straight up, but others bend and even grow horizontally for a bit until they find their own patch of open sky. It's quite remarkable, really, standing in the woods and taking note of all the ways plants and animals adapt constantly to their surroundings. Sometimes I think they do a far better job of it than humans. A recent walk around a local pond was a bit tricky as it was slippery with remains of ice and snow in the shady spots. Even without leaves, the trees give enough shade that many trails hold on to their ice longer than in open areas where the sun shines freely. The pond itself was still frozen through the temperature, though the temperature had been rising and the ice by the shore had begun to melt. This is a dangerous time for animals to attempt to cross the ice, especially dogs out for a jaunt, so it's probably a good time to keep them leashed until the melt is obvious to them as well. Dogs, unlike wild animals, have lost some of their natural suspicion of conditions in the wild, but even wild animals can get confused by thin ice. January is a relatively quiet time in nature, but it is far from silent. Every living thing is focused on survival at all times, but especially in winter. Good shelter is always important, even for plants, and so is a steady supply of food and water. When ice and snow cover the ground and make ponds and streams inaccessible, many birds and animals rely on the snow for their water. Others find ways to break through the ice if it is thin enough. Because plants and trees are mostly dormant in winter, their need for water is drastically reduced. The melting snow will eventually give them the water they need for spring revitalization. If you're feeling weary and discouraged, get outside. Take some deep breaths and start looking for signs of life. Hope is everywhere we look for it. Again, that was written by Mary Richmond, who's an artist, writer, naturalist, and educator who grew up on the Cape and lives in Hyannis. In some entertainment news, the Cape Playhouse in Dennis has announced its lineup for its 2026 season. The season will begin on June 3rd with Nat Zagree's Mozart to Pop Chart, a theatrical concert exploring and exploding the musical traditions that give contemporary music its beating heart. The show will feature Nat Zagree and a cast of Broadway singers and musicians. Zagree will be familiar to Cape Playhouse audiences for his roles in Million Dollar Quartet and The History of Rock and Roll. Mozart to Pop Chart will run through June 20th. The Cape Playhouse will explore the works of Stephen Sondheim with his most popular and beloved classic, Into the Woods, opening on June 24th and running through July 11th. Explore the mysteries of fairy tales from childhood. The hungry girl with the red cape on her way to Grandma's, the boy with the axe and a dream of felling a giant, a baker and his wife longing for a child, a secret princess with a missing shoe. The musical Hairspray will open on July 15th and run through August 8th. The 1950s are out and change is in the air. The winner of 8 Tony Awards, including Best Musical, Hairspray is a romp through the early 60s, a time in which traditional roles were about to clash with counterculture. It's 1962 in Baltimore, and plus-sized teenager Tracy Turnblad has only one desire, to dance on the popular Corny Collins show. When her dream comes true, Tracy finds herself in a struggle for integration that pits her against the reigning Teen Queen band. Based on the 1988 John Waters film of the same name, Hairspray will take audiences back in time. Mean Girls will open on August 12th and runs through August 29th. Based on Tina Fey's 2004 film, the show is an examination of stereotypes and roles and their ability to influence culture. The season will conclude with the 25th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee from September 2nd through 19th. Briefly, in some sports news, the Sandwich High School girls ice hockey team rebounded from a tough loss in their previous outing to pick up a thrilling 4-3 win at Dennis Yarmouth on Wednesday night. James Kroll's march towards 100 career points got a boost with a 6-point night as he helped lead the Bourne High School boys ice hockey team to a lopsided win against Apponequet High School on Wednesday at Gallo Ice Arena. With Kroll and Cole Thomas each scoring twice, the Canalmen got to 500 for the first time this season, evening their record at 4-4-1 overall with a 7-0 shellacking of the Lakers. And things had been going great for the Upper Cape Tech boys basketball team over the first couple of weeks of the season. The Rams had been winning and found themselves ranked in the top 5 when last week's initial Division IV state power rankings came out. Unfortunately, the team is likely to take a dip down those rankings when the next edition is released today, Friday, January 16th. UCT suffered its first loss of the season on Tuesday night when illness hit at a tough time for the squad. With a number of players on the team fighting through the flu, the boys weren't at 100% when they had to visit Blue Hills and came up on the wrong end of a final score for the first time this season, with Blue Hills taking a 71-58 decision. The loss ended an 8-game winning streak to open the season for Upper Cape Tech. The team fell now to 8-1 overall. And winning on the road in the South Coast Conference is never an easy thing to do, and the Bourne High School boys basketball team was very pleased to be able to accomplish that feat on Tuesday night in Seekonk. Bourne improved to a 2-5 overall with the win. They clawed one out in the fourth quarter, winning 46-43. And the Bourne High School girls basketball team went into action missing a pair of starters on Tuesday night, January 13th, and it did not take long for things to go south. Without a full complement, the Lady Canalmen took one on the chin against Seekonk, dropping a 61-25 decision. Starter Kaylee Gilman went down with a lower body injury just moments into the game, leaving the Lady Canalmen with even more spots to fill. She's likely to miss the next few weeks. And this story, performer Frank Hughes Jr. often portrays big-hearted characters, from the lovable Elwood P. Dowd in the Pulitzer Prize-winning play Harvey, to Mortimer Brewster, the concerned nephew of 2 murderous but well-meaning aunts in Arsenic and Old Lace, a role he's performed at both Highfield Theatre in Falmouth and Cotuit Center for the Arts. Hughes turns his talents to directing this month with Falmouth Theatre Guild's Proof, opening on Friday, January 23rd. It's a show he describes as having a heart of its own. It's not a show where you're distracted by anything, Hughes said. It's the characters on stage. Every character has a nice arc, a nice moment, and when I'm directing them, I focus on what they're feeling. In some versions of this play, you can say the actors know the lines. I wanted the actors to know the heart. A theater major at Flagler College in Florida, Hughes said his original interest in theater was behind the scenes. When asked if he wanted to be on stage as a guard in the school's production of Romeo and Juliet, he initially declined but was pressured into it, mostly, he said, because I fit the costume. After that performance, Hughes said he got hooked and wanted to do more performing. I still learned the technical directing. I learned how to do sound and lights, and I learned how to build a set, but I really wanted to understand the craft of acting. Hughes described himself as a shy kid who felt lost in his large high school. When I went to Flagler, it was a small school, and I found my tribe. I could get on stage, and I felt safe. As head of the IT department at Cape Cod Community College, Hughes said, he acts every day. I tell every student to take a Theater 101 class, an Acting 101 class, and a Public Speaking class. It will always benefit you. It will get you out of your comfort zone, and you will learn how to talk to people. It's a skill so many people lack. He said he was smitten by Proof when it was first staged in the 90s. I had auditioned for it in Walpole when it first came off Broadway, and I didn't get cast. I was bummed, but I still loved the show and kept it in the back of my head, he said. Having been an actor, Hughes thought he might like to try directing. I'd seen Jacob White directing and thought, that looks like fun. What really hits me about Proof is that it's about a relationship between a father and a child, and those are always the most strained. I'm a dad. I had a dad. It's hard to know. I'll never reconcile some parts of that relationship. The show is relatable. Every one of us has felt what one of those characters on stage is feeling. In 2005, a movie version of the play starring Gwyneth Paltrow as Catherine and Anthony Hopkins as her father was released. The movie was so serious, so emotional right from the beginning, Hughes said. Families, when they have arguments, sometimes they are wise with each other, sometimes they find humor in it. They can still be fighting, but there's a level of cynicism or sarcasm that I never thought the movie captured. I always thought the movie was too heavy. Unlike the film version, Hughes said he's tried to add levity to his production. I've tried to add a lot of human and familiar moments that family members will relate to. I've tried to make it more real. I hesitate to call it a straight-up drama because there are some really funny moments in this play. There are moments where I forget from night to night and I just blast a laugh because the actors do such a great job of hitting a line or hitting a cue or playing off of each other. Hughes said he's blessed to have Victoria Dreyer playing Catherine and Bob Bach playing the father. They've done shows together before and have such great chemistry. When they're on stage together, you can feel it. They're so good with each other. They really capture what I'm looking for, that emotional family tie. In addition to Dreyer and Bach, the cast includes Max Templansky as Hal and Sandy Basile as Claire. When he got the call that the Theatre Guild wanted to do proof, Hughes said, my biggest obstacle was, how are we going to do this? I want the audience to feel what's happening on stage. I want the lighting. I want the sound. I want the voices. I want the set to reflect congestion and make the audience feel like they're part of Catherine's psyche. Thank goodness Falmouth Theatre Guild has the best people. In addition to LeMay and Santos, Lou Stern will be helping with set design. He saw exactly what I wanted, Hughes said. The set perfectly captures a city backyard, open but tight. You can almost hear the city in the background. With props, Frank is so detailed, LeMay said. If it's a manila envelope, it has to be the one with the red string. It just feels so real. I want that authenticity, Hughes said. It takes place in the 90s. It was grunge and Harry Potter. It was before cell phones. One of our props is a landline telephone with a long cord. Well known in Sandwich for directing the Sandwich Middle High School's theater group, Knights Theater Club, Kevin Lacett is joining the Falmouth Theatre Guild in this production as lighting designer. He's been well loved in Sandwich and he's so creative, LeMay said. We're so happy to have him with us. Anyone familiar with the play or with other stage versions of Proof will want to see the Hughes interpretation. David Auburn wrote a great play, but the ending is abrupt, and I feel as if he gave the male characters too much weight in Catherine's journey. She's our hero, and she goes through hell of a journey. At the end, it's a relatable journey. You can see her coming out of it in the sense that it's almost inspiring, and I think that's what I'm looking for. I always thought it had to be Catherine who saves herself. We've given the ending a little bit more weight without anything other than visuals. Performances are planned for Fridays and Saturdays at 7:30 p.m. and Sundays at 2 p.m. Tickets can be purchased online at Highfield Theatre or at the box office. And that's all the time for today. This is your reader, Beth, saying thank you for listening and thank you for your continued support of the Audible Local Ledger.